Hello, everyone. James here. Hope you're doing fine. Uh, Having a pleasant day. Uh, I've been thinking about this video and why so many things happening in America right now. And there's some things that you you probably don't understand why things are falling, jobs are leaving, projects is being hampered and everything. Why is America falling? You're probably wondering. Where did it start from? Where did it begin? Well, I'm about to give you a few videos. Start at the beginning. And America was segregated. Let me show you how.
And if there's too many colored people around here, I definitely will get out. One of the main reasons was because it was a white community. And we understood that it was going to be all white. We were very happy to buy a home here.
This was Levittown, Pennsylvania, shortly after World War II, in a suburb that explicitly promised a white-only neighborhood. And it wasn't some outlier. It was the prototypical suburb built by the father of suburbia, Bill Levitt, who created several suburbs around the U.S., all named Levittown. But one reason Levitt wanted a white-only community was because the U.S. government was subsidizing it, and that's what they wanted. They said they didn't want racially inharmonious groups, lowering property values. That's why Levitt didn't just sell cookie-cutter houses. He sold a meticulously crafted, affordable, utopian lifestyle. So as the courts integrated public spaces like schools, more and more white people fled to these suburbs. And these patterns are still the defining characteristic of America's racial geography. But we now spend most of our time at work, and there, it gets a lot more complicated.
More than 1 million persons each year have pulled up stakes in the cities and turned commuters.
Shortly after the first Levittown broke ground in 1947 in Long Island, New York, about 80% of men still commuted the hour to Manhattan. And while neighborhoods were getting deeply segregated, these workplaces were getting more diverse. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 banned employment discrimination. More companies explicitly said that they were equal opportunity employers, and segregation within our workplaces declined. This meant the workplace was a crucial environment for us to interact with people of other races. Except that's not exactly how it turned out. A few months ago, researchers at Cornell and Penn State shared a data set with me, and when I mapped it, it kind of blew my mind. This is a map of where people work in modern-day Chicago. The taller an area, the more people there are. But now let's color in each neighborhood by the percentage of white people. You can see the city centers are pretty diverse. But now, here's what happens when they go home. What's even more astounding is what happens when we map people of color. Here's where black people work in Chicago. Again, they're concentrated in diverse city centers. But when black workers go home, they go to very segregated neighborhoods, clustered in poorer areas. And we can see the same patterns in DC, Detroit, Philadelphia, pretty much everywhere in the US. These maps show just how stubborn residential segregation is. But they also show what looks like a glimmer of hope for integration. Cities are remarkably diverse during the workday. So this got researchers interested in looking closer at what's at work. Let's look at how segregation changed in recent years. From 2000 to 2010, residential segregation between black and white people got slightly better. For the most part, segregation just mostly plateaued for all racial groups. But when researchers looked at how segregation changed during the day when we're at work, they found that segregation increased slightly across all racial groups. When we zoom in some more to the company level, we can see a bit more of what's actually happening. Researchers at Stanford and Harvard found within a company, segregation levels have gone down very little. In other words, we're exposed to about as much diversity now as we were a generation ago. But there are a lot more people of color now than there were in 1980. So what's going on? Well, they aren't being more represented at these white majority companies, which would look like this. Rather, they're getting opportunities at companies that are mostly non-white, over here. So this means that when we look at this from a company level, segregation has actually gotten worse than a generation ago. Of course, some places are pretty diverse. So researchers looked at what kinds of places actually have less segregation during the day. But they found that if a place is diverse during the day, it's likely not because people of all races are working alongside each other. Rather, it's probably because most of the higher status workers, like managers, are white, and the lower status workers, like janitors, are people of color. American policies engineered our segregated homes. But work, where we spend most of our time, many thought that could be a space where we form meaningful relationships with people of other racial backgrounds. That hasn't quite happened, and we see it in the most personal parts of our lives. In 2014, the Public Religion Research Institute asked Americans to list the people with whom they've discussed important matters in the past 6 months. In other words, our friends. Most Hispanic people had friends of other races. About 1 in 3 black people did too. But 75% of white people only had white friends. In short, we may be exposed to diverse spaces, but we still live very segregated lives.
But the whole
So that's just the beginning of why we're separate.
Tired of juggling multiple vendors just to run your
Yeah.
dental practice? Eliminate steps.
Here's a closer look at the 4 main pillars of this radical plan and how they could transform the American government as we know it.
One of the things that's interesting about Project 2025 is the tone. You hear the term woke mentioned dozens of times, radical mentioned dozens of times. It's remarkably driven by culture war politics.
Project 2025 is designed as a government in waiting if Trump or any conservative president returns to office. It's the brainchild of the Heritage Foundation, a conservative think tank and lobbying group that has helped staff Republican administrations since the Reagan era.
We cover literally every public policy issue in Project 2025, from domestic policy to foreign policy.
Kevin Roberts is the president of the Heritage Foundation and one of the driving forces behind the project.
All Project 2025 is trying to do is to be a corrective to the liberal nonsense that has been so insidious inside the executive branch for the last half-century.
The Heritage Foundation says Project 2025 is backed by more than 100 conservative organizations and a $22 million budget.
So I think the size, scale, and sophistication of Project 2025 is unprecedented.
The project has 4 main pillars: a policy plan, a personnel database, an online academy, and a playbook for the president's first 180 days in office.
We can be ready to hit the ground running on day 1 of the next administration.
The first pillar is a policy agenda that focuses on dismantling the so-called administrative state, or what some conservatives call the deep state.
Either the deep state destroys America, or we destroy the deep state.
For Project 2025, dismantling the administrative state means purging the civil workforce of tens of thousands of federal employees and replacing them with conservative, pre-vetted picks.
There is a concentration not just of power, but a concentration of radical leftist ideology in these employees. Hopefully, we will see over the next 10 to 20 years the elimination of entire cabinet departments.
The plan would dismantle the Department of Homeland Security, eliminate the Department of Education entirely, and transform the FBI into a political task force that is accountable to the president.
But the leadership of the FBI has been awful and rotten and not transparent for a long time. It is very important that Congress reestablish its purview over the FBI generally, its jurisdiction.
To give a sense of how radical this is, the FBI is an organization that has never been run by a Democrat. And so this is an organization that in its bones is a fairly conservative organization, and where now you have right-wing voices saying that it should be eliminated.
The playbook also outlines a plan to bring many federal agencies, like the Department of Justice, under more direct presidential control.
What Project 2025 articulates is the idea that the president should be the one directing the activities of the Department of Justice, even if that means that the president will not be investigated, or that the DOJ will be sent to attack the president's political enemies.
We will root out the communists, Marxists, fascists, and the radical left thugs that live like vermin within the confines of our country.
The Heritage Foundation says it wants to ensure that what remains of this whittled-down federal bureaucracy is conservative, not just for the next president, but for a long time to come. Pillar 2, Personnel Database. The Heritage Foundation has already contracted the technology company Oracle to build this database, kind of like a conservative networking platform.
We've recruited Americans all over the country, and so we've had well over 11,000 people who've applied to be considered by the next president and his administration.
Trump really emphasizes loyalty, and you see those practices now being adopted by Project 2025, where you fill out a form that essentially indicates if you are loyal to President Trump or not.
Once they're fully vetted, they can move on to Pillar 3, an online presidential administration academy that would train future bureaucrats in conservative values and governing.
So we want these people who are competent, who have great credentials, to be prepared for the specific job that they will have.
Project 2025 provides detailed policy plans for dozens of government agencies, outlining ways to create de facto abortion bans, slash federal investment in renewable energy, and roll back environmental regulations. Here, you can see several sections dedicated to consolidating U.S. immigration agencies and expanding their power.
Number one, we have to close the border. We do have to initiate the largest mass deportation project in the history of this country. The 12 million people who've come in as illegal aliens must be sent back to their native countries.
But how legally sound are these policy proposals, and what would they look like in practice? That's where Pillar 4 comes in, the playbook for the first 180 days of a conservative presidency. A big part of the plan is modeled off of a Trump-era policy called Schedule F.
Schedule F is originally an executive order that Trump signed that would allow him to turn thousands of career civil servants into political appointees that he could then fire if they displeased him in any way, and then have to be more responsive to a president who in the past has shown a willingness to fire people for disloyalty rather than for competence.
At Byers Airport Subaru, we've been family owned since 1897. Built.
So this goes back to oh wow. So this goes back to what's going on right now.
Because our need as
Hold on. Shout out to Miss Deborah.
High places. And just because you refuse to engage in the battle doesn't mean that the battle goes away. It's still there. So anyway, this Christian basically said that we don't need to concern ourselves with this and we don't need to concern ourselves with that. Basically just ignore what's happening, right? And the Bible tells us the opposite. We've just got to keep it real, saints of the Most High Yah. He says, do not ignore Satan's devices, right? Be not ignorant of Satan's devices, lest he gets an advantage over you. Don't ignore his devices. So when I hear people telling that we are not supposed to pay attention to this stuff, you preaching another gospel. Because the scripture tells us don't ignore. You say ignore, the word says don't ignore. Right? So here's the thing. There's a reason why the Most High tells us not to ignore Satan's devices. It says it right there in the passage. It says, lest he gets an advantage over you. If you don't know what he's doing or what he's up to, he can and will get an advantage over you. You will be caught off guard. I'm going to throw this little tidbit in there real quick. Kind of give you an idea of what I'm talking about. Now, you know there was a situation that arose a few years ago. It brought in and ushered in the seed, the 1, the 9. Y'all know what I mean? A lot of people were caught off guard spiritually. Why do I say spiritually? Because according to the Bible, we are supposed to have a certain mindset when things happen, right? We are supposed to be able to turn to the Most High when certain things happen, right? But when you are caught off guard because you were ignoring Satan's devices, he got an advantage over you. I don't mean to make light of it at all. Not at all. Because I know a lot of people, personally, who passed away from that. But they were not spiritually prepared. They were not ready to go to battle spiritually and deal with what was done in the earth. I hope you all are following what I'm saying, because
With Byberg, commercial truck insurance is just smart.
Well, so confused, so filled with pride, just like the Bible says, the pride
of racism, genocide, patriarchal systems, and one of the most exploitive economic systems that humans have ever seen in all of our history, and that is capitalism. Our foundations are bad. And this is what resulted from that. It's built into every single facet of our lives. It's built into our education system, our criminal justice system, our health care, our laws, our economy, everything that constitutes a daily part of our existence. They have the ingredients for the roots with which this country came from. And there is no making that better. It's like baking a cake with regular flour and then wanting to make it a gluten-free cake. It's not going to happen. You can't do that. So you scrap the whole cake and you bake a new one with gluten-free flour. It's like cleaning out an infectious wound. If you don't get every last bit of the bad bacteria, it will get reinfected. A tumor, if you don't scrape out every single last cancerous cell, the tumor will regrow. And that is the reason why we keep seeing this shit popping up every single generation. We are fighting the same fucking fights over and over because we have never completely cleaned out the racist, patriarchal, capitalist, genocidal roots that are our foundations in this country. It has to crumble. It has to. And the shitty part about it is how much collateral damage there will be in the process in terms of the people who are harmed by this. But every single one of us is now paying the price for the evil, oppressive systems that our ancestors built this country on. That is their legacy. And so it is our responsibility to be better ancestors to our descendants, to build a system that they don't have to suffer from 100, 200 years from now.
We are watching the downfall of America, and when I first started saying stuff like this months ago, I literally got bullied off of this app for a few months because there's so many people just like calling me crazy and saying I'm like violent, and there are a lot of people specifically who were saying like it's delusional to think that because it's not going to happen overnight. But no one said it was going to happen overnight. We literally have been watching it beginning to happen over the past year. It's taken an entire year to build up to this point, and it's still building up to a breaking point. And the reality is, when it comes to things like revolutions and the downfall of entire empires, there is usually not like a single event that happens that can be pinpointed as the beginning of that revolution. It is usually a series of events over a period of time, which is what is happening. It is going to be a years-long process, but we are watching it. We are in the beginning stages of it. An empire falls every 250 years, and America's hitting 250 years in 2 years, 2026, a year and a half, actually. That's going to look like. No one knows the events that are going to unfold till.
That's what I was talking about right there, where she said an empire falls every 250 years, and America is right there at the door. At the time that this was recorded, that she recorded that, it was a little bit more time, but it is less time now, right? We are knocking on the door of 2026 right now, and everything is unraveling so fast, and they are still feeding people a bunch of lies. A bunch of lies. And so,
we don't pick our defendants.
Imagine this, a land once seen as the ultimate dream destination, a place where the world's travelers long to step foot, to stand in awe before the Statue of Liberty, to walk under the neon lights of Times Square, to marvel at the Grand Canyon, or to feel the glamour of Los Angeles. For decades, the United States wasn't just another country on the map. It was the crown jewel of global tourism, a beacon of adventure, culture, and promise. But today, something has changed. A silent shift is underway. Millions of international tourists are saying no. Airports once buzzing with foreign languages are quieter. Hotels once filled with European families or Asian tour groups now sit half empty. Local businesses from Florida's beaches to Nevada's casinos are struggling to survive. The question is simple, yet deeply unsettling. Why are tourists refusing to visit the US right now? And more importantly, what does this mean for the very idea of the American dream? We live in a world where global travel has exploded. More people are exploring the world than ever before. Families are saving up for holidays, retirees are checking off bucket lists, and younger generations are embracing international adventures. Countries across Europe, Asia, and South America are seeing record numbers of visitors. Yet, against this backdrop of booming global tourism, the United States is experiencing a painful decline. Tourist numbers have dropped by 14%, costing the American economy more than $12.5 billion in lost revenue. But this isn't just about numbers on a balance sheet. This is about empty restaurants in Florida. This is about tour guides in Arizona losing their jobs. This is about taxi drivers in New York waiting for customers who never arrive. So, we must ask ourselves, has the American dream lost its shine? Or has the United States unknowingly built invisible walls that keep the world out? The first barrier, a maze of paperwork. For many travelers, the dream of visiting America ends long before they even set foot on US soil. It begins at the embassy. The US visa process, once frustrating, is now overwhelming. Appointments are scarce. Wait times stretch into months, sometimes even years. Imagine saving for your dream trip, only to find that the first available interview slot is next summer, or worse, in 2027. Even if you are one of the lucky ones who secures an appointment, the process itself feels less like applying for a tourist visa and more like interviewing for a high-level government job. Endless forms, endless fees, endless waiting. For some, an option exists to pay hundreds, sometimes nearly $1,000, just to fast-track the process. But this extra cost is often the same as a week's hotel stay. For many families, it's the deal breaker. And what about those from the 40 visa-free countries? Even they are not immune. Starting in September 2025, the ESTA fee will nearly double, from $21 to $40 per traveler. For a family of 5, that's an extra $100 just to enter, before even buying the plane ticket. It may sound small, but for many middle-class travelers, that money could cover a nice dinner in Rome, Tokyo, or Istanbul. What should have been the beginning of a joyful journey becomes the first sign of exhaustion. Travelers are left asking, why is it so hard to simply visit America? At the border, welcome or interrogation. Let's say you've made it through the visa maze, you board the plane, land at JFK or LAX, and finally breathe a sigh of relief. But then, the real test begins. At US border control, visitors often describe feeling like suspects rather than guests. Luggage searched, phones and laptops inspected, long lines, endless questions. Stories circulate across the internet. An Indian businessman detained for 4 hours because of his online search history. A Swedish family reporting that the whole experience felt more like an interrogation than a vacation. A Japanese tourist describing the process as cold and unwelcoming. And the worst part? Tourists talk. They share their experiences online, in blogs, in YouTube vlogs, and in social media posts that spread across the globe in minutes. A single negative border story can ripple across entire countries, making thousands rethink their plans. Tourism is built on a feeling, the feeling of being welcome, of being free, of being excited. But today, for many international visitors, the first feeling they experience in America is suspicion. So the question becomes, why spend thousands of dollars to feel like a criminal when other countries make you feel like a guest of honor? The strong dollar, when dreams become too expensive. Even if tourists endure the paperwork and the border checks, the next shock comes when they open their wallets. The US dollar has strengthened, becoming a safe haven for investors, but a nightmare for travelers. For Americans, a $5 cup of coffee may seem ordinary, but for a European tourist, with today's exchange rates, that same coffee suddenly costs the equivalent of $6.50 or 7 Aussie. Dinner for 4 in New York. Easily $200 to $300. A single night in a Manhattan hotel, $350 on average. Add tickets to a Broadway show, and the bill for one evening can reach $600 or more. Tourists from Germany calculate that a week in the US costs the same as an entire month's holiday in Spain. Brazilian families report that a Florida vacation now feels twice as expensive as a week in Rio de Janeiro. And don't forget the infamous tipping culture. Visitors who are not used to tipping are often shocked when an $80 meal suddenly becomes $100 or more. Slowly, the joy of the trip fades. Instead of marveling at the Statue of Liberty, tourists find themselves staring at receipts and calculating every penny. The American dream starts to look less like freedom and more like financial stress. The fear factor, safety concerns. But money isn't the only issue. There's something far more emotional that shapes the travel decision: safety. Australia, the UK, and Canada, 3 of America's closest allies, have all issued official travel advisories urging caution in the United States. The headlines are everywhere.
Damn.
Shootings, political protests, rising crime. Even though statistics show violence has slightly decreased, the image of America in global media is one of danger and instability. For a Japanese family thinking of sending their teenager on a summer study abroad program, that perception is enough to change the decision. Why risk California when Canada feels safer? For Brazilian parents, when their child asks, "Is it safe in America?" that question alone plants doubt. Tourism is built on trust. Once that trust is broken, fear takes its place. And fear is the greatest enemy of tourism. Nature's wrath, the climate gamble. Even if travelers look past visas, costs, and safety, they face another unpredictable opponent: American nature. From wildfires in California, to hurricanes in Florida, to snowstorms in New York, the U.S. is increasingly battered by climate-related disasters. In January 2025 alone, more than 1,300 flights were canceled due to blizzards. For tourists, this means vacations ruined, thousands of dollars wasted, and days stuck in airports instead of sightseeing. A Korean family described spending an extra $1,000 after being stranded in Denver during a snowstorm. Their dream ski trip turned into 3 days of airport food and hotel bills. Why would they return? Next time, they'll choose Japan or Switzerland.
Shout out to Whisper Global, because he only got 2 subscribers.
It's like no one in here. I'm shocked. Apparently this is the busiest airport in the world.
The world has made its choice. They are not coming to America anymore. Airports now report empty international arrival halls. Whole wings, built to handle millions of travelers, sit strangely quiet. International arrivals to the United States are falling fast, while countries like Canada, Japan, and Mexico are breaking tourism records. Airlines are cutting routes to America. Some foreign carriers have pulled out completely. Terminals, once full of life, are now being shut down for good. Hit the like button will reveal which nations are leading the boycott of U.S. tourism and how they're rerouting global travel away from America, because what you're about to see will truly shock you. Step into Terminal 3 at Harry Reid International Airport, the main international gateway of Las Vegas, and you will hear nothing but the hum of air conditioning echoing through empty halls. Gates that once welcomed full planes of high-spending visitors from Asia now stay dark for days at a time. I used to process 200 Japanese passengers every morning, shares Maria, a customs officer with 15 years of experience. Now, I am lucky if I see 20 international passengers in a whole week. The terminal feels like a ghost town. Korean Air reduced their Seoul to Las Vegas route by 60% in 2025, citing low demand. China Eastern suspended service completely. Even Canada has pulled back. Air Canada cut Toronto to Las Vegas flights in half. The numbers are devastating. International passenger traffic has dropped 47% compared to 2025. A former casino host reveals the human cost. High roller suites, which housed international gamblers for decades, now collect dust. We laid off our entire Mandarin-speaking staff. The international gaming revenue that once built this city has disappeared. The neon capital of the world is losing its global shine. And what is happening in Nevada is only the beginning of America's international isolation. Walk through Terminal B at Orlando International in Florida, the gateway to Disney World, and you will witness the fading of childhood dreams from around the globe. Immigration counters built for thousands now process only a few dozen. The arrivals hall echoes with emptiness, where families once celebrated their first steps into the Magic Kingdom. British Airways and Lufthansa have reduced their Orlando flights sharply since 2025, now focusing only on seasonal demand instead of year-round service. We used to have charter planes from Brazil arriving every day, explains Carlos, a ground crew supervisor. Whole extended families coming to experience Disney magic. Now, it is rare to see them. Now, we might see only a fraction of that. Some Brazilian families now choose Paris instead, because it is easier and feels more welcoming. The impact spreads across Central Florida's economy. Virgin Atlantic's suspended route has cut 300,000 annual visitors from the United Kingdom. TAP Air Portugal's cancellation has cut South American connections through Lisbon. International visitor spending, once 40% higher per person than domestic tourists, has collapsed. Children in Sao Paulo now dream of Disneyland Paris, not Disney World. Admits a Brazilian travel agent. America feels too complicated, too unwelcoming. Why struggle with United States visas when Europe welcomes us with open arms? The kingdom built on international dreams is becoming a domestic-only destination. The crown is losing its shine. Honolulu International Airport was once the Pacific Crossroads, where East met West in paradise. Today, the international terminal looks like an abandoned resort. Beautiful architecture, but filled only with silence and empty departure boards. My grandfather built relationships with Japanese tour operators for 40 years, says Kone, whose family runs airport transportation services. 3 generations of business destroyed in just 3 years. The Japanese have simply stopped coming. Asia-Pacific routes to Hawaii now show some of the slowest recovery in United States tourism, with traditional markets like Japan still far below 2020 visitor levels. Several airlines have reduced flights, or shifted to seasonal service only. The cultural damage runs even deeper than the economics. Sister city ties, built over decades, are fading. Japanese investment in Hawaiian businesses has collapsed. We are losing our Pacific identity, explains a Honolulu tourism official. Hawaii was America's bridge to Asia. Now, that bridge is gone. Korean tourists, once Hawaii's second largest international market, have turned to Guam and Saipan. These places offer easier access and better value. The aloha spirit, which welcomed the world for generations, now echoes through empty terminals. Welcome signs in many languages gather dust, unread and unspoken. Paradise is becoming an island of isolation inside America's Pacific Empire. Philadelphia International Airport, the gateway to America's birthplace, has lost every single direct flight to continental Europe. The international terminal, once full of connections to the old world, now serves mostly as extra space for domestic flights. Today, many of those flights run only seasonally or at reduced frequency. Airlines like Lufthansa and British Airways have cut back service, while other European carriers have shifted their planes to airports such as New York and Toronto. I have worked international customs here for 2 decades, shares Officer Thompson. I used to hear a dozen different languages every day. Now, it is mostly English. The diversity is gone. The historical irony is painful. The city where American independence was declared is now cut off from European recognition. Cultural exchange programs between Philadelphia universities and European institutions have collapsed, blocked by travel difficulties. International students tell us it is easier to study in Toronto than in Philadelphia, admits a university administrator. Even neighboring Canada has reduced access. Air Canada has slashed Toronto to Philadelphia flights by 80%, effectively isolating the cradle of liberty from international visitors who want to understand American history. Independence Hall now hosts fewer international tourists than small regional museums in Canada. The birthplace of American freedom has become a prisoner of...
Wow, I'm going to leave it right there. Well, were the people on that second video right? This is what it led to. The past, I had to show the video of the past to show what we think of what the people like Trump think in the present. And now that it did it to American citizens, and knows they keep it, it's black and white, but we know there's other nationalities of people. But now it's shown other places. Now it's affecting these different groups of people. The Koreans, the Japanese, the Brazilians, and all these other people. They seen what we see. So when they came to Georgia, this is what happened. Guess what?
Fewer people want to visit us here in the United States. Travel experts say there are fewer international travelers coming here than before.
As America embarks on its America First foreign policy, a lot of non-Americans are feeling, well, kind of unwelcome. In fact, dozens of countries have already issued travel advisories to their citizens amid the crackdown on immigrants here in the United States.
You might not have noticed it yet, but tourism to the U.S. is on the decline. The U.S. is set to lose $12.5 billion because of it.
Georgia tourism is booming. At least, that's what the headlines want you to believe. In July, the state's tourism office released a glowing press statement claiming a record-breaking second quarter, boasting 36 million visitors between April and June. Explore Georgia's director called it a turning point for the state's economic recovery, and Governor Kemp followed with a victory lap, declaring Georgia open, thriving, and more attractive than ever. But if you talk to people on the ground, a different picture starts to form. In Savannah's historic district, hotel managers quietly report 20 to 30% vacancy rates during peak season. On Tybee Island, one restaurant owner said bluntly, "This summer feels like 2020 again, but with fewer excuses." Up in the North Georgia mountains, cabin rentals are down, parking lots are empty, and business owners are openly questioning whether tourism has simply dried up. Atlanta, the supposed gateway to the South, is also flashing warning signs. Foot traffic in tourist hubs like Centennial Park and Ponce City Market is noticeably thinner. Museum attendance is down. Restaurants near the Beltline say weekend brunch. Once a blood sport to get a table, now feels like a quiet Tuesday. So what gives? The state says more people are visiting than ever before. Local businesses say they're bleeding. And airlines? They're making cuts, specifically to international routes. Lufthansa slashed flights from Frankfurt. Air Canada reduced service to Atlanta by nearly half. Even Delta quietly pulled capacity from transatlantic routes serving Hartsfield-Jackson, the busiest airport in the world that somehow has fewer inbound tourists. Here's the core contradiction. If Georgia is seeing record-breaking tourism, why is Main Street struggling while press releases celebrate? The math doesn't add up. Hotel occupancy is down. Restaurant sales are falling. Flights are getting cut, not added. And yet, the state claims it's never been better. Somebody's spinning. Either Georgia is having the best tourism year in history, or it's quietly slipping into crisis while officials sell us a fantasy. That's what we're digging into today. Because when the numbers don't make sense, it usually means someone doesn't want you asking questions. If you really want to understand what's happening to Georgia tourism, don't look at the glossy photos and state press kits. Look at the airlines. Look at the hotels. Look at the receipts. Because the official story says growth, but the infrastructure says retreat. Let's start with air travel. ATL, the busiest airport in the world, has seen a sharp drop in international arrivals. Hartsfield-Jackson's own quarterly reports show inbound flights from Europe and Canada have dipped 14% year over year. Routes that once operated daily are now flying 3 times a week, if at all. WestJet cut service to Atlanta entirely this fall, citing low Canadian demand. Condor eliminated Munich-Atlanta flights after just 2 seasons. Ticket prices are also sending a signal. Flights from London to Atlanta are dipping below $300 round trip, cheaper than a weekend to Miami or LA. Bargains like that don't exist in a strong market. They scream oversupply, under demand. And yet, Georgia says it's breaking records. Meanwhile, the hospitality industry is flashing red. Atlanta's midtown hotels are slashing resort fees, a move usually reserved for times of desperation. Savannah's Riverside Inns, once booked months in advance, are offering stay 3 get 1 free deals during what should be their busiest season. In Helen, a town that thrives on weekend tourism, one hotel manager told us, "We're at 62% occupancy. This time last year, we were at 88%. Local restaurants echo the same pattern. Lower foot traffic, reduced spending, and fewer tourists overall. Theme attractions, too, are taking hits. The Georgia Aquarium has seen foreign visitor group bookings drop by more than 40% compared to pre-pandemic levels. Tour bus operators that used to shepherd crowds from Atlanta to Stone Mountain now sit idle in parking lots. Travel expert Martin Dawes summed it up perfectly in a recent interview. If the tourism numbers are up, they're not showing up in the places that actually make money off tourism, and that's the real issue. The metrics Georgia officials are using don't reflect economic reality. They may be counting road trippers from Alabama the same as international tourists who stay for 2 weeks and drop thousands. The math is being stretched. The reality is shrinking. Airlines are pulling out. Hotels are discounting. Restaurants are downsizing. And yet the headlines keep telling us everything's fine. But behind the curtain, the house of cards is starting to shake. You don't need a spreadsheet to see what's happening. You just need to walk down River Street in Savannah on a Saturday night. Where there used to be street performers, packed patios, and lines out the door, there are now empty tables and staff standing around checking their watches. We used to have wait lists 2 hours long, says Maria Jensen, a hotel manager at a boutique property just blocks from the river. This summer, we've had weekends where we were 30% below our usual occupancy. The rooms are ready. The tourists aren't coming. Her tone wasn't angry, just exhausted. The same story echoes up north in the Blue Ridge Mountains. Mark Ellison runs a small tour company offering fly fishing trips and guided hikes. For years, his weekends were booked solid by spring. This year, he's operating at 40% capacity and had to lay off 2 longtime staff members. "We've shifted all our marketing to target locals," he said. "But Georgians aren't booking 3-day tours. They're driving up for the day and heading home. That's not sustainable." And then there's Tybee Island. Normally a summertime magnet for out-of-state travelers, it now feels like a shadow of itself. "It's been a ghost town," said restaurant owner Tanya Fields. "We had to cut hours just to stay afloat. I've never seen a July this dead. Not even in 2020, Tanya doesn't mince words. The state keeps telling people we're having our best year. I'd love to know where those people are eating, because it's not here. These aren't outliers. They're the people who feel tourism in real time.
Wow. So this is what happened. This is what America's past led to this. This is the empire coming down. Tourism is one of the biggest industries that's in America. In Donald Trump immigration, extreme immigration tactics, and executive orders all over the place, and raising the visa bill up to us Aximano. He ruined this. He caused this stuff. It's the farmers that is not getting international help, with China, that buy the process. That's affecting manufacturing. Going to be the next one. They do steel and aluminum, things like that. This is what the Heritage Foundation caused this. They caused all this to happen. And Trump went right along with it. Look what happened. He's tearing America down. His ego, his personality, even costing Walt Disney, almost $12 billion because his feelings got hurt. He didn't like something, so he sixed the FCC on ABC, and ABC fired Jimmy Kimmel. The people spoke up from across the country. All of a sudden, Jimmy Kimmel get back online, back on air. This is what happened when you put a spoiled brat president that have money all his life. This is dangerous with that kind of person, with their personality. That he, even internationally, they think that he can wield his power, and look how it's affecting other countries. They ain't want to do business with us now. And it's affecting all of us in this country. Nice going, Trump. Nice going. You screwed us, your own people. Them the American people. Now it's showing shout out to his channel. Alright then, ladies and gentlemen, another segment of Realities Coming Abroad. It ain't gonna be the same. Then people on Miss Redirect's channel, Deborah on Redirect, they're right. They're absolutely right. It's coming down. It ain't gonna look the same next couple of years, thanks to this administration. Why they trying to be so against instead of working together to bring common ground? He segregated and separated. Now we're going at each other. Other people across the world seeing this, and now we're taking it out on them. Shame, ain't it? Let it to be continued. Like and share, subscribe. Till next time, see you on the next video. Shout out to the content creators. Take care.